Welcome to today's Explainer. We are traveling back in time to ancient Egypt to answer one ultimate question. Who holds the real power? We're diving into Exodus chapter 7, which is this massive, world-shaking collision between the most powerful empire on earth and the creator of the universe. Honestly, get ready, because this is an absolute thrill ride. We're going to explore this epic showdown step by step, looking at the incredible miracles, the wild stubbornness of a mighty king, and the undeniable truth of who really is the ultimate boss. Buckle up, because we are stepping right into the middle of the action.
Imagine for a second standing right in the middle of a massive, opulent throne room. The walls are just covered in gold and jewels, and you're surrounded by heavily armed guards and the absolute richest elite of Egypt. Sitting on that throne is Pharaoh. This is a ruler so powerful that millions of people literally treat him like a living god. He commands giant armies, builds towering pyramids, and his word is absolute law. So when push comes to shove, who do you think really calls the shots? Is it a mighty earthly king with massive armies and visible wealth? Or is it God, an unseen but supreme force? Throughout this adventure, we're going to see exactly how this question gets answered, and let me tell you, the evidence is absolutely spectacular.
Okay, so God sends two incredible heroes on this mission to face off against the most powerful man on earth. But here's the kicker. They aren't young, muscular warriors carrying giant swords. Moses is literally an 80-year-old grandpa, and his brother Aaron is 83. Armed with nothing but a wooden walking stick, they step right into the danger zone. Why would they do that? Well, it all comes down to total obedience. Despite facing an incredibly intimidating, hostile ruler, Moses and Aaron don't hesitate for a second. They do exactly what God orders them to do. They trust God's orders way over Pharaoh's worldly power.
Picture them marching right past those heavily armed guards to deliver God's firm command. And Moses and Aaron, they don't sugarcoat it, and they definitely don't politely ask for a favor. They boldly demand on behalf of the God of the Hebrews, "Let my people go so that they can worship me in the desert." You see, the Israelites have been enslaved for generations, forced to build Egypt's wealth through exhausting, backbreaking labor, and God is officially stepping in to liberate his people. But telling a ruler like Pharaoh to just hand over his entire unpaid workforce, yeah, that's not something he's going to take lightly. The tension in that room must have been totally unbelievable.
Welcome to Round 1, the Snake Showdown. God had already told Moses and Aaron exactly what to do when Pharaoh demanded a miracle to prove their authority. So in total obedience, Aaron steps forward, takes his ordinary, everyday wooden shepherd's staff, and throws it down right onto the palace floor. And boom! Right in front of Pharaoh's eyes, this piece of dead wood twists, transforms, and literally comes alive, becoming a slithering, real-life serpent. Imagine the gasps in the room. This wasn't some cheap parlor trick. It proved right out of the gate that God is the boss of creation itself.
But Pharaoh isn't scared. Actually, he's incredibly arrogant. Instead of bowing down to this amazing display of divine power, he calls in his own sages and sorcerers. Using dark magic and trickery, these Egyptian magicians step up, throw down their own staffs, and create what appear to be illusion snakes. Pharaoh laughs, thinking his guys can do the exact same thing, and that Moses' God is nothing special. It sets up an absolutely epic battle right there on the throne room floor. We've got true divine power versus a cheap magic trick.
But those magicians were dead wrong. Suddenly, Aaron's snake turns on the fake Egyptian snakes and chomp. It aggressively swallows up every single one of them. True power absolutely dominates. This is such a critical moment because it illustrates the total futility of false idols. It shows us that God's true power will always crush fake human magic. The Egyptian magicians could only create a temporary, weak copy of power, but God's power completely consumed their best efforts. God wasn't just showing off here. He was completely dismantling their false gods right in front of the king.
Now, even after seeing this amazing, undeniable miracle, Pharaoh gets incredibly stubborn. The text tells us he was hard-hearted. What does that mean? Well, it means his pride and his ego completely blinded him to the truth. Pharaoh just watched a real miracle eat his own magician's magic, yet he flat-out refused to listen. This serves as a massive cautionary tale for all of us about the danger of letting your own ego trap you. Pharaoh was so convinced he was the greatest that he simply couldn't accept God was more powerful, and he was setting himself up for an absolute disaster.
So how do these two vastly different forces react next? Well, God shows incredible patience. Even though Pharaoh was acting super stubborn, God doesn't just instantly destroy him. Instead, he graciously sends Moses back the very next morning to meet Pharaoh at the riverbank to give a clear warning before doing anything else.
God always graciously issues warnings before sending his judgments. But Pharaoh? Pure arrogance. Despite the clear warning of what is about to happen, he ignores the message completely, proudly clinging to his disobedience.
Since Pharaoh won't listen to the warning, it's time for round 2, the Red River Showdown. Following God's exact instructions, Moses tells Aaron to take that very same staff, the one that ate the magician's snakes, and raise it high over the mighty Nile River. Now the Egyptians worshipped the Nile as a god because it provided literally all their water and food. By targeting the Nile, God is stepping right into the center of their world and their economy, proving once again who is truly in charge of nature.
The exact moment Aaron strikes the water, total chaos unfolds. The beautiful, life-giving water instantly turns into thick blood. Because the water is ruined, all the fish in the river die off immediately, and the river begins to stink with an absolutely horrifying smell. It gets so desperate that everyday Egyptians are forced to get down on their hands and knees and dig into the dirt around the riverbank just to find a single drop of clean water to drink. It's an overwhelming, escalating catastrophe born directly out of one king's stubbornness.
And God's power didn't stop at the main river. The blood went absolutely everywhere. It hit their canals, their ponds, and all their reservoirs. But even more shockingly, the blood reached all the way into their homes. Even the water that had already been collected and was just sitting inside wooden buckets or stone jars right inside people's houses magically turned to blood as well. God's reach was inescapable, invading every single corner of the empire and proving his power goes far, far beyond the banks of a river.
I want you to really picture this for a second. Can you imagine the terrible, rotting, fishy smell of that river? Imagine walking outside your house and realizing your whole town, your whole country, suddenly smelled like a million rotting fish baking in the hot desert sun. Gross, right? What would you do? They couldn't bathe, they couldn't drink, and they couldn't even breathe clean air. It was a completely miserable experience that brought their comfortable lives to a screeching halt.
You'd think this absolute disaster would finally break Pharaoh's pride, right? Nope, no way. Instead of helping his thirsty, miserable people who are digging in the mud for water, he calls his magicians. They use their dark, secret arts to copy the trick on whatever tiny amount of water was left. And what does Pharaoh do? Totally unbothered. He just turns his back and stubbornly marches right back into his luxurious palace without a second thought. His massive ego completely blocked him from caring about his own citizens. And this stubbornness wasn't just a quick inconvenience. Remember, Moses gave the warning in the morning, a chance to avoid the mess. By day 1, the river is struck and turns to blood. And this horror didn't just magically go away the next morning. The terrible, bloody river lasted for a full 7 days. Because one leader refused to swallow his pride, a whole nation suffered in a stinking, messy environment for a whole week. It just goes to show that willfully disobeying God always leads to giant, lasting consequences.
If there's one massive takeaway from this explainer today, it's a big idea called divine sovereignty. That's just a fancy way of saying God is the ultimate boss over all creation. From turning a dead staff into a living snake to changing a mighty river into blood, it proves an absolute reality. No human empire, no matter how vast, wealthy, or heavily armed, is more powerful than him. Pharaoh thought he ruled the world, but he just got a very harsh lesson in who truly runs the universe.
So what did we actually learn today? First, earthly magic and human tricks are totally useless against God's true power, just like Aaron's snake chomping down the fakes. Second, being stubborn and arrogant like Pharaoh only brings massive trouble. Third, God is super patient and always graciously warns us before things go wrong. And finally, true heroes aren't always the ones with the biggest muscles. True heroes, like the 80-year-old Moses and 83-year-old Aaron, are the ones who obey God completely, no matter the odds. So the next time you face a massive challenge in your life, who will you trust? The temporary tricks of the world or the ultimate unstoppable power of the Creator? Click the bell button, like, share, and subscribe.